And we're live. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Holy Crap, the vlogcast. Vlogcast that comes from a skeptical point of view to answer some of the questions of why. This vlogcast started as a combination of spite and the Streisand effect when some people that knew me back from high school used Facebook the way that they wanted to, which was to post links and articles and such, which was utter crap. And I used it for what I wanted to, which was to correct said crap, and they didn't appreciate that one bit. Part of this is also to follow through with the old adage that sometimes the journey is more important than the destination. I'm known as Shujin Tribble all over the place. You can find me under pretty much all social media under that name. That's my nickname. I was born to a Roman Catholic family in Brooklyn, New York, raised on Long Island. I currently reside outside of Buffalo, New York, and am an unabashed atheist. I would be wearing Pastafarian outfit, except I haven't done my dishes yet, so I'm not going to do that. We've got a little bit of a different lineup for the evening. That's quite all right. Let's start, as we typically would, over in the top left-hand corner of the North American continent. Good evening, Dallin.
Good evening, folks. Online, known as Dallin. Born and raised in North Central Canada to a Lutheran family. Religion was not a very large part of my life. I mean, it was church on Sunday, but that was about it. My parents always encouraged me to keep an open mind about things, and that served me very well over the years. I was, up until recently, a very live and let live sort of person until I realized that the fundamentalists, the people that I grew up laughing my ass off at, were slowly getting a lot more influence than they deserved. And I realized at that point it was time to take a side. And I chose the side of humanity.
Coming south into the Midwest of the United States. Good morning, good evening, Bridget.
Good evening. I'm Bridget Fitch. I was born and raised in the South, have relocated up to the Midwest. My family was Church of Christ, which is worse than Southern Baptist. It's like Southern Baptist on steroids. When I was a young earth creationist, and when I started nursing school, it just shattered my whole worldview. And I'm here by accident by virtue of this. And for those who can't see what this is, it's an iPod 4th generation Nano. I found the community through this.
Oh, well and good. Moving to the right, as you're going along on your scorecards tonight, over into Da Capital, or at least the hot-aired version of it, over in Maryland. Good morning, Renata.
Good morning. Get that out of the way. I'm unknown tech, and I don't feel very good. Unfortunately, my voice also doesn't sound very good. And you guys can hear me okay, right?
Fine.
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
Also good.
All right, the too long didn't read version from Reddit. I'm an atheist. All the other shit's crap. I don't give a damn, and it sucks because it fucks up the world. Next.
Okay, Dallin, you're gonna go ahead and you're gonna edit that out, right?
Let's see what I can do.
Yes,
Hey, we get one F-bomb and it still maintains a PG-13 rating.
Fine. Moving across the pond over to England. Good morning, Chris.
Good morning, Shujin. I'm Chris, currently based in Preston in the north of England. Was raised nominally Catholic, but it never took. Always been a fan of science and science fiction, and looking at the questions of where might we go in future, where we've come from, etc. The interesting questions. I would say left it all alone for most of the last 20 years, but over the last 5 years, after seeing more of the damage that's being done through, not just through religion, but through, say, alternative medicine and other sort of crazy ideas to real people, I've started becoming a lot more active and a lot more outspoken. And this podcast is part of that for me.
And moving south through the channel over into France. Good morning, Joseph.
Good morning. My name is Joseph. I'm living in Paris, France since around 1989, but I'm originally from London, Ontario, Canada. And I'm doing everything I can to promote critical thought and something else I don't know the term for, but self-sufficient, independent thought.
Works for me. Folks who have been watching the show fairly regularly or listening would recognize that at the moment Joseph is not with us from Pittsburgh. It's all right. It's entirely possible he might be a little bit busy at the moment. He may join us a little bit later. Bridget mentioned before we went on that, Heretic Woman is not with us at the moment. She's got some stuff that's going to be going on in the morning, which, considering how late the after party ends up going sometimes, yeah, she needs a little bit more than, 4.5 hours worth of sleep for this. So, considering that we were starting to get snow earlier today, yes, I know.
You keep that stuff on that side of the country, all right?
Yeah.
Dude,
Can you send some down to
You don't want-
Maryland?
no.
It's really fun to watch the idiots drive down here when they see stuff falling from the sky. They're like, ah!
I hate
No.
They
to
start praying to God and Allah and Yahweh and all them.
Yeah, I hate to tell you
Keep it
this,
up there.
that's a worldwide phenomenon. I would almost dare to say it's a scientific fact that upon first snowfall, the global IQ plummets.
What I want to know is what's up with everybody running to the stores to get milk, eggs, and bread? Do they have a craving for French toast or what?
Survival.
Well, you got to have something after you get up in the morning to have sex.
Always.
They're considered staples here in America.
Yeah,
Bread to
people
make
don't-
sandwiches, bread to make milk, or bread to make toast or sandwiches, or as an ingredient to fluff up your meatballs or stuffing or stuff like that. Milk goes into nice, heavy, creamy soups which fill you up, and then toilet paper, of course, for the obvious reasons, because you never know,
You
you
sure
don't
it's
wanna
not
run
for
out of
French
stuff and
toast?
have nowhere to go get it.
See, people should just do what the mayor told everybody back the blizzard of 77, 78. The mayor of Buffalo basically said, look, people, we're shut down. Go get yourself a six-pack, kick back, and let us do our work. He got a lot of flack for that, which I can't completely understand why. I mean, it's not like he was telling everybody what they needed to hear, which was sit down, let us do our work, and stay the hell off the street, which, hey, fine by me.
It was probably the six-pack comment, because speaking as a Canadian and stereotypically a beer drinker, I'd have been all over that.
Yeah. Well, then again, it's Buffalo. It's a drinking town with a football problem. What are you going to do?
See, all I do is when we have a blizzard come through here, and I know my problem isn't that I can't get out on the roads. My problem is that when they shut down the roads, if you get caught out on there, you get a ticket.
Yeah.
Do here too.
Right.
Yeah.
So they'll shut down the roads, and they're perfectly drivable, but because so many people down here are idiots and end up killing each other, they end up shutting down the roads. So the only thing I have to do to make sure that I'm okay when we have a blizzard come through is make sure that I have my little mini propane tanks so that I can have my coffee or my soup or whatever warm beverage it is that I want in case some idiot does go out there and ends up hitting a power line, which has been known to happen.
Brilliant. All right.
Exactly.
We'll see how this plays out. For those of you that are watching live, of course, first off, thank you very much for taking the time with us. The Crap crew are ready to believe you. Close enough this time, right?
You're getting there.
Appreciate that.
We are ready to believe you.
Yeah, there's a thing about that. I'll tell you about
Or
that.
not.
Not necessarily.
Depends.
But in any
That's what
case,
you're trying to sell us.
if you are
We are willing to believe you.
Yeah. If you are watching live, please by all means take advantage of the question and answer system over here. If you are listening after the fact, feel free to drop us an email and let us know what you think. You can send it over to podcast@holycrapthevlogcast.com, and we'll see what's going on. Just to make sure that everybody's up to speed on this, yeah, I've been sick as a dog for unfortunately too many days in a row. Tech's got something. There's stuff going around, and as much as I would like to have just called off tonight, truth be told, I really can't. I just really couldn't do it. So if I sound a little bit weird, if we sound a little bit weird, sorry. You get what you pay for. And for those of you that are watching, you get the advantage of seeing what our current wardrobe looks like. And no, don't say anything to the audio people. You'll have to just tune in and find out for yourselves. Just know full well that it is mythic in nature, almost. Unless, of course, you come and see, in which case, at that point, it'll be proven. But we'll talk about that later.
Oy vey.
In any case, with 5 minutes on the clock, with apologies to Noah, Heath, and Lucinda, Noah, just don't do that to yourself. I know it's all kinds of fun that you go ahead and you break a rib and stuff, but don't do that. Minimally, at least do something worthwhile. If you're gonna break a rib, listen to Eli say, "Why do we do this? Because go fuck yourself." That's why. That's two. So, don't do that. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go listen to God Awful Podcast, God Awful Movies podcast. Never mind. Let me get it alone. Your 5-minute freestyle starts here and now. For those of you that have been under a rock for the last, 20 years, 30 years, you might have heard about a little series of movies, Back to the Future. You might have heard about it at some point or other. Well, we're fast approaching. Marty McFly is going to be coming forward from the 1980s to 2015. The 26th of this month, as a matter of fact, 11:16 a.m. Pacific time, if memory serves. Am I being pedantic about that? Yeah, there's a reason why. Time is an enemy. It robs us of life as tick, 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 ticks away. Thank you, Z100 and Mr. Stress. So, I titled this one Time Travel and Causality. Now, we've been told on many an occasion that time travel is impossible, except for, the small matter that we are traveling through time, 1 second per second, every day of our lives, and outside of it. Because, even if we're not us, the pieces that make us up are continuing to travel through time at 1 second per second, but that's being pedantic at this point. I have a hypothesis. Now, we've heard about the first causation problem, the first mover problem. And it's a piece of apologetics. Truth be told, it's crap. But I have a hypothesis. And that's all it's going to be able to stay, because I don't think it's any way of proving it in any logical sense of the term. So follow me on this a second. What if it is possible to go backwards in time? I know, it's stupid. I'm starting to fall into the Ant-Man series of physics, but just give me a second here. There's a thought that there is an infinite number of timelines that keep branching one from the next to the next. You start from whatever is the base timeline, and if two possibilities can happen at any one point, a new timeline is generated from that, and then another two from those, and so on and so on and so on, until there is an infinite number of timelines going forward. But you don't have an infinite number as you go backwards, because you're constantly subtracting back through until you get to whatever was the origination point in time. And talking about time as a point instead of a line is kind of a weird concept, but it's got to have origination moment. And even that's not the right term for it. But what if it's a matter of that, you can go backwards in time? Well, going backwards in time is not the same as going backwards on a street. I mean, everybody moves at different rates, and they get wherever they're going at whatever point they get at whatever time they get at. I mean, you can just see that in a car. You get on the Long Island Expressway, and, well, basically nobody moves for 2 hours trying to get into Manhattan. But with time, it's not quite the same thing. What if it's a matter that you can go backwards? What if it's a matter of that it is possible and as a matter of fact is necessary. With an infinite number of timelines, if only one civilization was able to create a method for going backwards in time, that is an infinite number of time travelers that would go backwards through the branches to smaller and smaller and smaller timelines. A smaller number. Until eventually you get to the first timeline, a singular timeline, a temporal singularity. And as we know full well, you can't have stuff occupy the same space at the same time, because suddenly you have, well, big boom. What if the causality for the universe is the universe's ability to have even one civilization go backwards in time? An infinite number from all of those different timelines suddenly converging at one point, banging everything into existence. The causality being its own build. Now, like I said, it's stupid. It's a hypothesis. It could never be anything more than that. But is it really any much crazier than having somebody say, somebody basically said, I want a universe. Okay, there's a universe. Is it really any much crazier? More importantly, is it any more believable or provable or not? Next time somebody gives you a problem with it was done because somebody said do it, well, see how well they can wrap their head around that one. Just be sure to mop up the brain cells as they start to drip out of their nose at that point, would you? Don't make a mess. This is episode 85 on the docket, Your Honor. Is anybody out there? Anybody home? I was going to use a musical quote, but I decided against it. Come back to that in just a couple of seconds. And excuse me while I might mute the microphone for a second. Apologies. So I got off my usual programming last week because I thought, I'll be fine. I can do it. I know exactly what I'm doing. No, I screwed up stuff early on, so we'll deal with that in a little bit. Since our Canadian contingent is down by half, 50%. That's half. You do know the math, right?
It's a metric twosome right now.
Thank you. Exactly so. So let's do with the.
If you're doing a metric twosome, does that mean you need some holy water-based lubricant for that?
Dude, so we're not going to talk about holy water because that's usually got E. coli. We're not going to talk about that now. Dallin, since you're on the opposite side of the border from us at the moment, we're usually waiting to find out what good news we've got for Rafe Badawi. Is he in your neck of the woods yet?
I really wish I could say that he was, but unfortunately, as of this moment, to the best of my knowledge, he is not.
Even though we missed it out last week's show?
Has there been any progress in that? Like his court case?
The latest I've heard is that they're still holding off on further floggings, but other than that, no progress.
So as of the current recording of this show, it is now 3 years, 4 months, 1 day since Rafe Badawi was unjustly incarcerated for thought crimes. Our thoughts and hopes are still with you and your family. We can't wait for you to get over this side of the water.
I really wish. I mean, we have an election coming up in a couple of weeks now.
Well, everywhere.
Yeah, this is a federal election, so we're electing our prime minister, equivalent to your guys' president, just with no illicit affairs with other women or other men,
yet,
as far as I know. No birthers, no truthers, none of that wonderful stuff. There are a few things I will admit, but
hopefully no pedophiles.
Well, I really wish that the whole case of Raif Badawi had made it to one of our three parties' lists of things to do.
Yeah,
Because we just had just recently there was a man freed from Egypt. I can't remember everything about it, but the situation was not that dissimilar from what Raif is going through right now. So if we can do it for one guy there, why the hell are we not doing it for this other guy here? And yeah, I realize this is Saudi Arabia we're talking about, and that there's a whole lot of, shall we say, cooperation going on, you know, where the black stuff is concerned. Yeah. And if a lot of people could get off of this whole dirty oil BS about the province I currently live in, we as a continent could start putting on that right kind of pressure to tell these people, hey, look, we don't need what you're selling. Mm-hmm. So if you want us to continue to be customers, you better shape up. But instead, someone is saying that that the province I currently live in right now, north of the city I live in, is currently a wasteland of dredgers and diggers that are strip mining the entire province. This is the kind of BS I got to put up with every day.
Yeah, this whole thing is something we should really end up talking about in the semi-near future. The health and welfare of the planet in general because of our energy needs. Yeah, we should really go ahead and have a talk about that one pretty soon. But for the moment, unfortunately, we are where we are, and it sucks. But on the bright side, we have the luxury that we can go ahead and talk about it and bitch about it, and that's exactly what we're going to end up doing soon. But for right now, we're going to talk about stuff that otherwise would have been relegated to Star Trek in the 60s and, well, the 80s, and the 90s, Jules Verne, you know, that kind of thing. There was an article that apparently Dallin had told me about last night while we were doing our DJ show. Dallin, real quick summary on what this one was.
Okay, I'll give you the Cole's notes.
Scott Kelly?
Just hold on. I'll give you the Cole's notes on this one because I don't have the article pulled up. I will search for it, however, though.
Yeah, well, don't. Yeah, we can see about putting a link into the notes, but otherwise, just a Reader's Digest is fine.
Yeah, the Reader's Digest about it is that while observing a star that is just over 1,000 light years away from us, a deviation in light was discovered. Now,
I read this one.
Yeah, now normally it's congruent with perhaps detecting a planet. However, there was something a little more anomalous about this one than normal. Again, I don't have the article in front of me yet. But the bottom line is, one of the speculations was that it was not a planet that was going in front of the sun and causing this distortion, but perhaps some kind of superstructure.
What was that based on?
Again, like I said,
Deviations in light.
Yeah.
Hold on. They surmised. They said it was one of several possibilities.
Yeah.
One possibility was that it could be some kind of structural setup because of the way that they do the light measurements of light against the background of the star and everything else. They also said it could have been pieces of a comet that was in an elliptical orbit around the sun, or the star that they were focusing at the time. So it's one of several possibilities. They didn't say it was the only possibility.
No.
But it's a possibility nonetheless.
Yeah.
And it's fun to theorize about.
Bring it out as one of several possibilities is still pretty groundbreaking.
Yeah, the place in question was originally located by, if memory serves from the article, amateur astronomers. Wow.
We're having
I'm drinking just straight coffee, guys. Just regular straight coffee. So
You'll be
don't
able
give
to
me-
English soon enough, folks.
Yeah,
They were crowdsourcing their data.
Sure.
They were asking people to examine their because they're monitoring thousands of planet or star systems, and what they do is spread out the research to private users.
Yeah.
And
Anybody and
one of them
everybody that's
found
willing to
something.
help.
Yeah, and somebody found something and they called it in and they looked at it a bit more. And
Yeah. The star
And-
is KIC 8462852.
Otherwise known as Jenny.
Yeah.
Thank you, Bridge.
Jenny,
I was
Jenny.
really getting worried that somebody wasn't going to get that. Thank you.
Yeah, if the number 539 had been in that, yeah, that would have been it. Like, good night, everybody. That's it. We're done.
Yeah. For those of you that don't get the joke and the reference, you're young, and you've missed out on some really good times. Trust
it's not your fault.
me. No, it's not. But the possibility that it could be an alien civilization is, when all is said and done, pretty low on the possibility chart. Simply because, we don't have any other civilizations to base it off of. So we don't have anything other than speculation at best to go, you know what, that's what it would be. We're not going to say it's aliens, but
And let's just leave it at that, because let's face it, not a single one of us has that particular hairstyle.
it's true.
Although I will admit, I came close this morning when I got out of bed. It was like,
Yeah.
from hell.
I was going to say not yet.
Yeah, wait till about 6 o'clock tomorrow morning, and maybe we can talk then.
Yeah. So the idea that it's an odd dip in the amount of radiation that was coming, solar radiation, if you will, and I can't say solar because it's luminosity, I guess is probably the right term enough for it. If I remember right, it said that it dipped by something on the order of like 20% of its illumination otherwise, which is a stark amount.
Mm-hmm.
It's not supposed to do that quite that much. And it was happening on an irregular pattern, an irregular cycle. Now, yeah, it could be a whole bunch of possible things. It could be that there's something that we don't even know is out there at this point. But it wasn't equipment failure. That was one of the things they went through as a skeptical thing. You check and make sure, are you really seeing the thing that you think that you're seeing? Well, are you seeing the same thing that I'm seeing? Yes, I am. Okay. Is the Kepler observatory saying? Yep, we've got it over here. How about over in Hawaii? Are they saying, well, we weren't looking at it right there. Okay, that's fine. How about you guys? Yep, we got the same thing that you've got. Okay. Carry the 3. Okay, that's enough places that we can say that it's not equipment failure. So, it's a good starting off point right there. The idea that it could be a structure, though, that's tantalizing. That is really, really tantalizing. That would be that would be arguably one of the most significant discoveries of humanity.
Well, even the fact that this little nugget, this minuscule sand grain of possibility, as you called it, if it's out there, think of the impact. And I don't mean like impact for us, if from a religious point of view, because let's face it, we still got Ken Ham to deal with.
Mm.
But I'm talking from an inspirational point of view. So now we've got this sliver of speculation, just this tiny, tiny little thing. But could it be something to grab onto that could, say, spur us to put a little more focus on things like deep space exploration, perhaps accelerating the timeline for manned space exploration?
Sure.
You mean like putting in a penny instead of half a penny per tax dollar into NASA, for one thing?
Well, I was thinking more of a nickel personally, but any step forward is still a step forward.
I'll buy that for $1.
Ain't that the truth?
If you waved $1 in front of NASA, they'd like run around in circles like a dog and just yip, yip, yip until you gave it to them.
Actually, at this point, I think it'd be more along the lines of they'd like guard their hands really closely and go, "Are you sure? Because the last time you guys gave this to us, well, I don't think that we've ever gotten that. Because I mean, the most that they ever got was back in the Apollo program, and that was
yeah,
Cold War
actually,
saber rattling."
Well, it was funny. I had to do some. I actually had to debate a guy who is a. Well, this was informal, but it turns out that I work with a guy who's a bit of a conspiracy theorist, and another guy I work with loves to troll him. So, so we're all doing a team building thing, which is actually just at a local pub having beer and wings, and these two guys start talking. And they bring up one of my favorite subjects, the moon conspiracy. Or, excuse me, the moon landing conspiracy. A slight hot button for me because, well, I love astronomy. I love everything about it, and I've already seen how all the claims that are made by these individuals, because it's show 85, they've been debunked, and debunked very hard. Well, this guy, basically, he and I got into it, and he started asking, well, then why did they cancel it? So I went looking, like, why did we stop going?
Because we found out it wasn't made of cheese.
Wrong.
It was a joke.
Yeah, I know. No, it was politics.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course it was politics.
Yeah, we got Skylab because of no longer going to the moon. It was a huge political decision to stop funding that kind of deep space. And I've had no coffee tonight, ladies and gentlemen.
Sounds like you need more vodka.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Were you listening last night when I was trying to do my Russian accent? But no, it was purely political, which really sucks. Because if they'd kept going, where would we be now? Would we have somebody from another star looking at us going, that star's dipping by 20% luminosity. What's going on?
Yeah. All right. Before we go too much further into this one, we need to cover one of the bases that's kind of important to me and to the discussion in general. I forgot who it was that had said it, some philosopher or other, who and I'm going to paraphrase here, who basically said there are two tantalizing possibilities that are both equally disturbing, frightening, and glorious. We are not alone in the universe, or we are. The possibility that we are the only sentient civilization in the cosmos, in all of the universe, is a frightening possibility.
Yeah, to me, that's depressing more than frightening.
Yes. Yeah. But the idea that we could be the only one is very highly improbable. But it's still a possibility nonetheless. I mean, let's face it, you flip a coin, you don't have heads or tails. You've got heads, tails, and, it fell on the floor and it's on its rim.
Right, it's but you're also talking about the statistics of life being recognizable as we know it to be.
And that's, you see, you're leading the bit. Just what I like about this crew. People wonder why I have so many people. This is why, because they know right where I'm going, and they don't even realize it. So that's why I wanted to make sure that, Chris had gone ahead and caught me, or tried to catch me on Facebook, and was like, all right, what kind of information are you looking for? Because I've got some. Well, Chris, let's talk about Mr. Drake and his equation a little bit.
Yeah.
Right. So, sometime back in the mid-20th century, there was a guy called Drake who came up with something called the Drake equation, which is an idea of what we would have to look for if we were to go out looking for alien civilizations. So it consists of a number of factors that are multiplied together. So you start with like the number of stars in the galaxy, the rate that they're forming, the number of those stars, or sorry, the fraction of those stars that have planets, the fraction of those stars that have planets that may be habitable to life, the odds of intelligent life forming on one of those planets, the odds of that intelligent life forming a civilization, the odds of that civilization forming, transmitting by radio that we could detect, etc., etc. It's quite a long list of number of factors. The first few, such as the number of stars in the galaxy, we can measure. We're starting to get a handle on the number of stars that may have planets. As we're detecting more and more planets every year outside the solar system, we've now got a catalogue of several thousand. The problem is various figures have been produced based on this. None of them are very reliable because about the last 4 or 5 factors, depending on how you work the equation, are utterly unknown. We don't know what the odds of life forming are on other planets. We don't know what the limits of the conditions in which life can exist are. We're expanding that through research on things like extremophile life that exists on Earth in nuclear reactors, in volcanic pools, in deep sea thermal vents, etc. So we're getting a broader and broader picture of the conditions that life can inhabit, but we've no idea what the situation will be on alien worlds. And we've no idea what the odds are of a civilization deciding to transmit by radio are. So it can be a useful tool for where we might look and what we might look for if we were to go out looking for alien life. But other than that, it's of limited value. But one of the fascinating things are with the number of planets we're discovering and the amount of information we're getting at within the next generation or two of space telescopes and NASA missions, we may be in a position to start answering this question, of are we alone out there?
So there's a piece about this I want to make sure that we're on board with. And as a matter of fact, before I even get to that part, Dallin found the correct quote for me. So if you fill everybody in on that one real quick.
Sure. Right after he said it, I just posted in our chat here. It was from Arthur C. Clarke. And it is, 2 possibilities exist. Either we are alone in the universe, or we are not. Both are equally terrifying.
Which is very, very true in a lot of respects. Now, what Chris was talking about with the Drake equation, as a matter of fact, because of the Drake equation, that was one of the things that helped Gene Roddenberry sell NBC on Star Trek way back when, which brilliant, smart guy to go ahead and do it. He kind of fudged it a little bit, but he at least had the right idea to go along with it. So the idea of there being a civilization using a method of communication that we would be able to detect and recognize and decode. Now, we take it for granted a lot of times, the methodologies that we use for mass transmitted communications. Cell phones are ubiquitous at this point, and they use a very complicated system, or at least they do now. Not so much back in the early days. They'd be equivalent to a walkie-talkie that would be working both transmit and receive at the same time. So I'm going to go through around with a couple of guys right now to give you an idea as to how complicated this can be. We're going to talk about television signals for a second. Television, admittedly, is 10 times more data as a baseline than just audio communication. So let me run with this one for a second. Tech, if memory serves, you should probably know this one. What is the television broadcast standard here in North America?
Talking about NTSC?
That's exactly the one I'm looking for. Right. You don't have to. You don't have to go ahead and tell us what the breakdown is, but you got the right acronym or initialization. That's the important part. Chris, what is the broadcast standard over there in England?
I'm not sure. I can Google it quickly.
As a matter of fact, you do that real quick. And Joseph.
PAL, P-A-L.
Okay.
I just remember from my days working, there's the NTSC standard, which is pretty much standard here in the States, and then when you go over to Europe, it's pretty much PAL, P-A-L. Because I remember the TVs, when we first break them out of the boxes and put them on display, they'd either auto-detect the standard, or you had to, in some cases on the older models, actually set the standard yourself in the settings.
I think Tech's right. From what I can see very quickly, it looks like a version of the PAL standard.
Yeah, I can vouch for that one
But
because...
don't quote me on that.
No. As a matter of fact, I can. Back when I was using my Amiga, most notably, NTSC was here for North America, and PAL was a slightly different set that we'd have to use for some of the European games, especially the English games, because they'd work on a different resolution and such. I destroyed one monitor because of that, but that was not uncommon, unfortunately. But that's okay. And Joseph, by some stretch, do you happen to know which one it is over there in France?
Yeah, pal. But most machines these days will take both. So.
And do you know what it was before PAL?
Oh, it was always PAL from the start. They adopted that standard.
Okay, I'm trying to remember because there was at least one other one that I'm remembering, CCAM. Now I'm trying to remember if that's...
Yeah, well, they call it PAL CCAM because at the time, that was way back in the 1970s, it was kind of like a dual standard, and they're not very different, so they adapted for both. I think it's a difference of one pin or something like that. It's a more connector problem than anything.
Okay, so let's go with this for a second. Bridget, I'm going to ask you a question that I'm going to be expecting that the answer is I have no freaking clue why the hell are you asking me this.
Okay.
Do you have any idea what the difference would be between a color signal and a black and white signal for television transmission?
A color signal might put out some infrared, and that would be detectable further out. I don't know.
Black and white signals are sent in MIME.
Almost. Very close. There's actually a reason why I'm going with this for a second. And Dallin, how, to the best of your knowledge, how is a television signal encoded as far as to how is it projected onto a screen? What gets displayed first?
Please don't explain that in detail.
No. Do you even know?
All right, you explain. I'm going to go look at some porn.
Yeah. You guys make it out like I'm some kind of physicist here or something, which I'm not. I'm going to take a wild guess and just say it's a digital electronic signal transmitted over the air, gets put in, and then comes out as some kind of signal which bounces off a phosphorescent tube. Of course, I'm dating myself by saying this, and that's how it happens.
Yeah, basically comes down to it's magic. I ain't got to explain shit. That's what it comes down to, right?
Okay, look,
Look,
this is not a toupee, okay? My name is not Trump, all right? I'm trying to be a little intelligent here.
No. It's okay. I'm intentionally doing this because, well, first off, we've said on many an occasion, we're lay people. We don't know super techie stuff. I know some of it because of my ham radio experience, but truth be told, I don't understand the ins and outs of all this either. We don't. And generally speaking, a lot of people don't. Only the people who are like really into these standards, who have to build for them, design how to encode for them, to decode for them, those specialists are the ones that are going to know how to do that. And even those people have got to go ahead and be very cognizant of which standard are they working with. Is it black and white? Is it color? Where is the audio signal? Is it on the same frequency? Is it a different frequency? What's the amount of frequency that's being used? How far is the spectrum being used? There's a whole bunch of different things. So the point of it is, if there is a signal being sent out there, would we even be able to detect it? That's a good question.
Oh,
What would we even be looking for?
it wouldn't matter. We just have to look for a type of non-stellar radiation, or anything outside of the norm that we've seen until now, like this.
Yeah.
You guys are forgetting something else.
Which is?
There's the Kardashev scale. If anybody remembers, Sagan even referred to it, a variation of it at one point. But it was made by a Russian astrophysicist, and it was talking about how to rank how to rank civilization, and it was basically on energy consumption. All right, and based on the scale, we're only like 3/4 of the way to a Type 1 civilization. The Type 2 civilization would be using like a Dyson sphere, and the Type 3 civilization would basically be consuming the energy levels of its own galaxy, but it'd be able to do everything with it, like turn energy into mass and mass into energy and all that other shit. So we're talking about extremely advanced at that point. And so when they were talking about examining the star, and they saw the deviations in the light that was raising all the speculation about what's causing it. Is it just a couple exocomets that were destroyed and now are doing a ring around the star? Is it an alien civilization, superstructure, things like that? That's one of the reasons why we're looking at the light scales, because we could, when you consume, like we do, the energy and stuff, it pulls away. It's a noticeable effect. So if we're looking at something and we're looking at a star and the star looks normal and everything else, and suddenly, well, the energy output of the star has just dropped by 20%. Something's going on,
All right.
What guarantee do we have that we're even looking in the right place? That could happen and we could miss it.
Exactly. So now we're looking at a star that has a 20% dip in it, but we didn't catch it during the dip phase. Mm-hmm. So now we just think it's a lower level star.
Yeah, but I tend to think about, we have all this hoo-ha about the alignment of planets, that like the one that happened around 8 years ago. So, if you have an alignment of planets that happens once every 200 years or whatever, that's going to block a lot more light than a normal.
But an alignment
orbit,
even based on perspective,
so many variables.
Not going to last very long.
Well, of course not.
Right.
But that's what they're detecting. So it could be an alignment of planets. That's the planets combined are blocking out more light than normal, and it only happens once every so many 100 or 20 or whatever years.
Okay.
Yeah. If I can jump in at this point, there was again, I forget the exact year, but there was a researcher called Jocelyn Bell-Burnell back in the mid-20th century that found in radio astronomy measurements this very regular signal, which was tagged LGM, which stood for Little Green Men. Because it was unexpectedly regular signal coming out, the kind of thing that you might expect from an artificial broadcast. It turned out to be pulsars, which are collapsed stars that spin at an incredible rate, and from their poles they give out intense electromagnetic radiation, and as the star spins on its axis, you get a strobing effect. So if you're in the right line of sight from it, you get a burst of energy every X number of seconds, and they're incredibly regular. And these are now used in sort of calibrating astronomical positions and distances, etc. For any kind of actual artificial transmission, we'd now be looking at information content on the transmission, and there's various ways of mathematical ways of classifying this.
Any pattern.
There's certain ways of mathematical ways of looking at different patterns, which go way beyond the level of mathematics I've studied. But what was Tech was saying was, and Joseph were commenting on, which regarding reductions in light from a star. One of the ways in which we find planets outside our solar system is that if a planet or an object transits across the face of the star, it blocks out a percentage of the light from the star.
Correct.
And you can see a regular dip, and from that you can get the period of the orbit. Through then the laws of gravity, you can get the distance of the orbit, and you can look at estimating the mass of the object, etc.
Right, and hence why they speculated that it might be a structure, because it was an irregular pattern.
Yeah. From this one, I've just had a very brief look at the abstract of the paper in the first few paragraphs. It turns out what they think it is an exocomet, or similar, which is maybe the comet or the comet's tail, or the tail from the fragments, which would change over time as it got closer to the star. You know, more heating on the comet's surface would eject more gas, which would expand, block out light from the stars.
Explanation, because it's so cold, we don't see them out there until they make themselves really well known by getting close to a star.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
It's highly likely out of all the
exactly. That's what they think is the most likely explanation at the moment. It seems, unfortunately, that the mass media may have jumped onto a slightly fringe conclusion on this.
Oh, as always.
That's a shock.
Yeah.
Well, don't forget, as human beings, human beings, we're fallible. You know, we're not perfect. Nothing's perfect. So we tend to project our desires, our wants, our needs onto anything and everything. I mean, that's why so many religions are still hanging around, because they have a lot of needs that were projected into them. The need to be loved and liked by everybody else. The need to have safety and security and comfort. And you know, scientists make the same mistakes. You know, like what we're seeing right here, we would love to find a superstructure in space that is alien in nature, that demonstrates an intelligence other than our own, whether it's superior or equal, or it doesn't matter, but just that there is something else out there. There are so many scientists who would love to find that. Well, of course, we're going to project that.
And this isn't the first time.
No doubt. And
pulsars.
I would say, yeah, you're right. And
we did the same thing with pulsars when we were coming across them.
Yeah. I've visited the European Space Agency headquarters. I've spoken to a number of scientists involved in different missions. I started studying for a degree in astrophysics, which unfortunately I had to quit for financial and other reasons. And yes, there are just about everyone that's involved in cosmology or astronomy or astrophysics professionally, or as a scientist or as a layperson that's interested, would love to find evidence of something else out there.
Right. I'm not saying that all of them project that onto their research or to their studies. I'm just saying it would not be unexpected to have one or two people do that, like with the amateurs.
I would say for something as the magnitude of that, that anyone that involved in it was likely to be incredibly cautious in how they report their findings and what they do, and the evidence required would have to be overwhelming.
Yeah.
What the scientists in this, Joseph, just be a quick second. I'll
Sorry.
wrap this up really quickly. What I'm looking at from the paper here is that the scientists involved are postulating possibly that this is natural debris or an exocomet or something else of that nature, and it looks like the mass media have jumped massively on it's aliens, and this has happened before, will happen again.
Yep.
But this is not what the professional researchers on it are saying at all. And I think to even suggest that they're jumping to that conclusion at this stage is a great injustice to them.
It's
Yeah.
the
Right.
media,
There-
not the science.
I didn't see any signs in the article that a scientist jumped to that conclusion. The only thing I saw in there was that maybe at some point somebody, whether it was an amateur scientist or a scientist, opened up their mouth to the possibilities, and like you said, the media group went, "Oh, aliens!"
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But science should be admired, actually, for their
skepticism.
retinue. Is that English? But because when you look at the size of the universe and the billions of planets out there, it's almost we exist. That's already our first evidence, and that something else like us doesn't exist in the universe. Well, it's almost a statistical impossibility, but science doesn't jump to conclusions. They're not going to say we found it until they find it. So even though it's looking pretty damn good that there's life elsewhere in the universe, they're not jumping the gun at all.
No, and again, it's something again I would passionately love to see, and personally, but I'd say the amount of evidence required, it's one of those stages where, as Shujin hinted at, with like the different communication standards and whatever that we have on this planet, we may not even be sure what we're looking for.
Yeah. Now, I want to hit that a second, because there's a piece of that I wanted to make sure that we finalized on the information side, because there's a piece of this that, as I was learning for my ham radio licensing, I did not know about at the time. I will admit complete ignorance on this one. We're all pretty much still familiar with FM radio and AM radio broadcast. And I had to unlearn a lot of that stuff. One of the radio stations that I was fortunate enough to spend some time on was a college radio station over here in Buffalo, 91.3 FM. 91.3 megahertz of radio transmission. Now, knowing that frequency, if you've got a digital tuner on your radio, you can just punch that in. Oh, there it is. It comes in. It's clear as a bell if you're about 50 feet away from the broadcast antenna, but it comes in. But the actual ins and outs of that, don't even think about. How much do you have to fine-tune the reception? How wide a frequency band are you supposed to be pulling in? How much power is coming in? And that starts to get really nuts if you think, okay, is it supposed to be 10 kilohertz wide that you're listening? So from 91.2 to 91.4, is that the amount of frequency that you're supposed to be looking for? Or is it a megahertz wide, in which case the amount of power is spread out all across 10 times the amount of area of radio spectrum that we would otherwise be looking for? And then, what kind of polarization is there? Yes, just like with light, radio waves can be polarized. Is it circular? Is it directional? Is it encoded in an amplitude modulation? Is it in a frequency modulation? There's so many pieces about this. We may not necessarily be able to go looking for it in any way that will survive any one particular lifetime for somebody, with
Right.
how many different things we have to go looking for. Bridget, I'm kind of wondering, do you have any kind of knowledge on the radio spectrum this way, with this kind of stuff?
Not so much as I know that SETI has been, pointing several satellites at different points in the sky trying to pick up on something. And the chances are, even if something was being broadcast from another solar system, it takes so long to get here, and there's a great chance that we would miss it. We have to be looking in exactly the right spot, and who knows where that would be.
There was a time where they were scanning just for certain frequencies, but since then they've learned to spread out their radar, so to speak.
But they still can't cover
almost the
every
entire.
direction.
No, they can't cover every location, but they're covering the entire spectrum.
Yeah, I am. On that note, it's been a while since I did any detailed reading on this, so if I get this slightly garbled, I would ask listeners to forgive me. There is, as with the Earth's atmosphere, Shujin may know about this, there's various ways that the atmosphere interacts with radio signals, and you can do things like bouncing long-wave signals off the ionosphere to increase range, etc. So with the interstellar environment, there are certain frequencies that get absorbed by the interstellar medium, which is a very tenuous collection of sort of dust and gas out there between the stars. There's different frequencies which will be receivable over large distances on there. One of these is sort of the hydrogen alpha line.
Also a means of
spectral
telling
amount.
the chemical composition of a universe as well. Sorry.
Yeah. So yeah, it's also that's also kind of thing. It's people look at for stellar spectrography is to look at the composition of different stars and objects out there.
But we're also assuming that they
So it
would be
means that you don't have to look at the whole spectrum, because you can make an educated guess that anyone out there trying to communicate long distance by radio waves would look at a certain selection of frequencies. You can also look at the amount of time radio signals are about here, and you can target certain stars within a certain distance and narrow the odds and increase your chances of finding something. Again,
but we
as
would
we're
have
finding,
to assume that they're even broadcasting with radio waves. That may not be the case. There may be some technology they have that we don't know about.
Yeah, sure, and that's always a case. And there's a case made that a civilization might broadcast with radio waves for, say, a period of, say, I don't know, 100 or 200 years, and then move on to another technology that we don't yet know about.
Mm-hmm.
So that would limit our opportunity of what we could find.
Mm-hmm.
But we've got to look with the tools that we have.
Yeah, there's a piece about this that I want to make sure that folks can actually experiment for themselves with.
Mm.
If you want to get an idea as to how much radio waves are magical, and I don't use that term lightly, at night, what you can do is go out with your car and turn on. Well, don't turn it on inside your garage without the door open or anything. But if you're lucky enough to be outside with an AM broadcast receiver, tool around on the dial a little bit. Just go. If you've got an analog, dial it a little bit at a time. If you've got a digital tuner, whatever, same kind of thing. But just kind of go up and down through the band a little bit, and keep a notebook with you, and listen to some broadcasts that come through. See if you can grab, especially like the top of the hour, bottom of the hour, see if you can grab a couple of call signs, what frequencies they're on. And then a little while later, come back inside and take a listen. From over here in Buffalo, outside of Buffalo, I can pick up 770 AM, WFAN, previously known as WNBC, New York City. From here in Buffalo, 500 miles away. I can pick up, oh shoot, I forget who it is, but I can pick up a radio station out of Detroit every once in a while. I can pick up some French and Korean stations coming over the border from Canada, which, by the way, Dallin, thank you ever so much for that, puddling up my frequencies over here. Thanks so much for that.
Anytime.
You're welcome. But if you do that, especially at night, because that's when it happens, it's a magical thing. That's what ham radio guys love to do. You go out there, especially in the early evening, and you start transmitting all over the world. You never know where you're going to hear from. And if you're lucky enough to have a shortwave receiver, oh, dude, you pick up stuff from all the hell over the place. I got the chance to talk from Long Island. I actually have I have a QSL card. I got to talk to Voice of America, Belize City, Belize, Central America.
Wow.
That was freaking awesome. That gives you an idea as to what it can be like when you know what you're doing, when you know what you're listening for, and you know how to tool it in, and you know how to make it happen.
Yeah.
Is it just me? The long waves travel longer distances, if I'm not mistaken. And during the Second World War, France was using long wave technology to listen to England.
One of the things about certain frequencies in the long wave zone of the radio spectrum is that you can bounce them off the ionosphere, which is a layer in the upper atmosphere that reflects certain radio frequencies. So you can bounce them up and down to different parts of the world, which increases the transmission range greatly on there, and that's been used a lot, so you don't have to have transmitters all over the place. Another thing that you can do if you have a sort of a portable AM radio is that you can get an impression of just how cluttered that the radio spectrum is. And also, interesting tip I learned recently, if you tune to about 600 kilohertz, something in that range, that's the range that's used by broadband Wi-Fi signals, and also given off by a lot of domestic electrical equipment. So if you're having slow broadband or Wi-Fi speeds, you can identify what's causing the interference using an old AM radio.
And AM radio is also going to allow you to pick up lightning. Lightning goes off, it's an electromagnetic pulse, and you will hear that crashing and crackling all over the radio dial at that point too. Like I said, it's kind of magical that way.
Cool.
Sounds spooky. Listening to static during an electrical storm. You take an empty frequency and during an electrical storm, and you can sometimes hear it.
Oh yeah, it's amazing. And what some ham radio guys will do is at certain frequencies, they will get ionospheric bounce. Yeah. But from specifically the ionization of meteors streaking through the upper atmosphere.
Oh, wow.
Whoa.
And they will bounce through those streaks to people who are listening on the same frequencies, kind of, and then afterwards they will triangulate, and they will find out where was that meteor streaking across the sky and put it up for everybody to see.
It's
You
all
can't do
about
much with it
angle
afterwards.
of reflection.
Exactly right. That's exactly what it is.
And long waves reflect since they have a lower they have a longer
Longer wavelength, lower amplitude.
Something like
Yeah,
that.
well, they bounce at lower angles. That's all. And high frequencies bounce at higher angles, so they tend to be more dispersed when bouncing off the atmosphere.
There's a whole big thing about radio theory. But we can talk about just theory
Yeah,
later.
this is probably massively beyond the scope of the show.
At
Yeah,
least
but you do
Sounds like
realize
I need to get into ham radio.
all of this is very difficult. It's only with difficulty detectable by other planets because it doesn't. A lot of this doesn't escape our
Yeah.
atmosphere.
a lot of it doesn't, but a lot of it still has. Now, there's a couple of pieces about this that we could very easily delve into without getting into PhD area at all, because some of us have got pieces of information that we work with. On the technology side, I mean, if I were to ask Tech about wiring up TCP/IP, I'm sure he'd have a pretty good idea on it. Dallin for programming, me for the ham radio side and the pieces that I know about and encoding. I mean, it's stuff that even though we're not experts, so to speak, we know the stuff that we know about because we've got a little bit of a thing of it. And that's really the point that I want to take away from it. Even with us, with our limited scope of knowledge, there's a lot of stuff that's super complicated to go even further into, and, well, we don't really much know what we're going to be looking for or if we're even asking the right question, as we found out from the answer being 42.
That does bring up an interesting point, and it also kind of goes with something Joseph said earlier about pattern recognition.
Yeah. How do you know that you're looking for the right pattern?
Yeah, well, and the thing is, too, we're putting, and I mean, it's not our fault, but we're putting everything through a human filter, a Terran filter, actually. Let's go a little bit further here. You think about, okay, we believe we've detected planets around other stars. Now, there is a calculation, I used to know it, I could go right behind me and get my textbook about it, to calculate the life zone of a star based on its size and other factors, like what type of star is it, how big is it, what is the Goldilocks zone around that star where life as we perceive it could exist.
Like, how do we know that life isn't made out of like completely different, like based on methane?
Exactly.
It could be.
And that makes you wonder. So look at our own solar system. Look at Titan. We've landed a probe there. Look at Europa. We've speculated. I can't say for certain whether or not they've said it is ice covering it.
Yeah.
But could there possibly be life under that exists, that is of a completely different paradigm than what we know, what the human filter is? So therefore, we talk
if
about
I can just jump on that on Europa, one of Jupiter's moons. Yeah, the surface is covered with ice, and that's been confirmed through observations from Earth and spacecraft, from like gravitational measurements, etc. It's fairly certain that there's a large body of liquid water underneath the ice. Estimates for how deep this is vary, but it's possible that life based on fairly similar principles to our own could physically exist there. And by similar principles, I mean we're talking about carbon-based, which, due to some of the basic chemistry, carbon is the most likely candidate for anything as complex as life on Earth to form, and some liquid water as a solvent to exist. So it's possible, whether or not, or when we'll get round to cracking through that ice and exploring what's underneath. I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, we're not going to have that happen until America finally gets over there that big moon full of hydrocarbons, because they need freaking liberty and
Yeah.
freedom. Because America.
But anyways, my point is, and it again, it just piggybacks on what Joseph said. What we perceive as a pattern, what we perceive, like if we sent out codes in using prime numbers as a cipher, I believe.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, we know that, but that is a real shot in the dark to assume that, let's say these, if there are aliens at this star 1,000 light years away, would they look at it and go, what the hell is this? Or would they recognize it? Like,
Yeah.
with us, it's a human filter. No, Tech,
yeah.
it's a human filter.
Hold on.
And therefore, everything that we're looking for, we're applying our own filter to it.
Right.
There
There is a universal language, okay, that any quote-unquote intelligent species would be able to understand, regardless of language barriers and conceptual barriers. Any intelligent species that understands the atomic structure of different elements, the only universal language would be a demonstration of those elements. Helium atoms, hydrogen, oxygen, all those, because the universe is consistent in those. Okay, we know what hydrogen looks like. Every single star is comprised of hydrogen at some point. It exists throughout the universe. That would be a commonly spoken language. Would be the structure of the hydrogen.
That should be a filter.
Yeah, Tech.
That would be the grounds of creating a translation between two species. We would be able to look at that and go, that's what we call hydrogen. They'd be able to look at it and give their word for it if they even spoke a language, or written language, or whatever, or even whatever numerical concept that they have for it. At some point, we'd be able to use that. Basically the periodic table.
You had something to say, Chris? Sorry.
Yeah, sure. Tech. I see what you're saying there. And yes,
but like a
universe
3D demonstration of it too, like we'd have a projector.
Yeah, no, and back to Dallen's point about transmitting in a sequence of prime numbers or etc. Then there are certain like mathematical patterns such as prime numbers, such as Fibonacci sequence, a sequence of
but that's in the base
squares,
10, right?
Right, squares or cube numbers, and that are exceedingly unlikely to occur in nature. And it doesn't matter whether it's in binary or it's base 10 or base 8 or whatever base that you use. There is very simple mathematical tools for converting between bases, and virtually any civilization that got to the point of being able to utilize radio waves and receive and interpret them would be able to recognize as being a complex source signal containing information on there that again, using the Jocelyn Burnell, for example, that we recognize the simple repeating pattern of radio energy back in the mid 20th century, as possibly being of intelligent origin. We later worked out what it was, but there is certain things that are that contain information structured in a certain way that no natural phenomenon is likely to cause, and we can then interpret from there, working up from an understanding of a sequence of prime numbers to various other mathematical formulas, and from there to things like chemical elements, concepts of mass, size, volume, time, etc., that could be encoded over distance, that once the basics are understood, should be able to be interpreted.
The content of the message isn't really that important, because what we have to recognize is the pattern, because the whole point of a radio transmission is to, from the sending end and on the receiving end, it's turning on and off a series of switches. I mean, when you receive something, it has to be in a pattern that can activate some sort of mechanism, and which means there's a logic to the signal itself. It's in, it's either an I/O on or off, that the receiver would be able to interpret. So all we have to do is just recognize that on-off pattern, no matter what frequency it's at or whatever. It's just that it's not just like noise. The universe is just like noise. I mean, light switch to the universal noise, the light be just like a constant flicker. There'd be absolutely no pattern to it. But if you're getting
there may well be patterns. I mean, there are plenty of things in nature which cause regular patterns. They tend to be fairly simple patterns.
Well, I'm talking to a micro scale. I'm not talking about, like blocking light, planets blocking light and shit like that. I'm talking about like within the actual waveform itself, there being an oscillation of frequency. I don't have the language for this.
Yeah.
Okay, you've got a point here that I kind of see where you're going, even if you're not quite getting the right word out.
Yeah, sorry.
And the term is period, and this is an important piece of it all. We have conceptually the concept of the passage of time, typically broken down to seconds, is what we typically would work with on a daily basis. What if that's not what somebody else is utilizing? What if the expectation is that the period for each broadcast is far and away longer than what we're expecting because we offer on a different scale?
We don't even understand our own sense of time. I mean, for like a fruit fly, we could be all moving. We could be mountains for a fruit fly.
Spatially, yes, but the amount of time that would be for the period of any particular transmission, we don't quite know how that would be. And that's another piece that we would be imposing onto whatever it is that we're looking for. Because we would expect, okay, it should be something that would be simple enough to recognize, because every pulse would be...
I mean, hell, our own sense of time is relative to our gravity. When we put our geosats in orbit, we have to resync them constantly because they go out of sync.
Oh, that's a proximity to the gravity source. Yeah, well.
Exactly. So whatever we're sending out there could ultimately be altered. The time prints on them could ultimately be altered by whatever they pass through before they reach another civilization and end up becoming completely garbled.
Yeah, it's part of redshift, but yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many possibilities.
Again, that's that's a phenomena. That kind of distortion and things is something that, to some extent, we can take account of.
Right, if we know that there's a gravity lensing effect going on between us and another galaxy that we're looking at, which we've actually observed, and we have identified what gravity lensing is, what causes it, in the theoretical causes of gravity lensing, and the effects and the observations, okay, we can take account for that. But we haven't examined
the signals coming
we have to be careful to ensure that we are not coming across something new that we haven't accounted for before. And you never know. If a civilization is specifically advanced far enough, we may not have anything that could detect them.
Yeah, certainly that's...
But
That's certainly a possibility.
Which is interesting to me.
But
I
the
find
light
that
has
stuff
a limited
interesting.
spectrum. That's
Yeah.
that's
Again, we have to look for what we can find with the tools that we have.
Yeah, look how blind we are.
Yeah, and so people like organizations like SETI and NASA and other groups will look at, okay, so these are the tools that we have. We have certain type of radio telescope, certain type of optical telescope, certain type of microwave telescope. What could we find with these? And we can look for that. As to other forms of communication, other forms of signals, gravitational waves, or something else, then yeah, those may well exist out there, but we have no technology or no means of measuring or finding them. So at the end of the day, for practical purposes, so what? There's nothing that we can do about that.
And that's something else. If the civilization is far enough advanced, they may not even be looking for something that's on our level of primitiveness compared to what they are. They may no longer be looking at those particular wavelengths. They may be completely sheltering them out at this point.
Again, that's a possibility. And they may have some devices, some way of communicating that we've not even theorized about yet.
Oh yeah.
Again, we don't have the tools to look for that. So, why worry about that? If we develop tools for new methods of communication, then we can start looking on those frequencies, those methods of communication, and we'll see what we find.
Well, I think we're going to start. We may see in our lifetime a new method because we've just come up with a true quantum. I think they called it a quantum switch, a quantum circuit. We've created the first true quantum circuit for quantum computing. They solved a problem that they were having. I don't remember all the details, but basically, it was the hurdle that they were having to get over to making a true quantum computer in what we describe as a computer to be.
But it's still a pattern.
No. What I'm talking about is advanced computer technology. We're evolving our computer technology and advancing it at an accelerated rate, and we've created one potential solution to the quantum switch problem that they were having, and
that's internal.
That means that eventually we're going to get to the point where our quantum computer systems, we're going to be able to start really throwing a lot of these complex problems at these systems and getting answers. Potentially.
I don't understand what you're saying, actually.
A quantum computer, in theory, can work much...
No, I know what...
The computers that we have right now are basically a frickin' abacus. They were having a problem with basically switching the bit, so to speak, if you will. Making a true switch circuit inside of a quantum computer. I don't remember if it was a college or if it was a research institute that solved the switching problem. And by solving it, they can actually start creating, using the solution, albeit not cheaply, a true, honest-to-God quantum computer, not an abacus.
But even a telegraph is sending an on-off signal. So...
Yeah,
and funny.
Our technology is advancing in so many areas very rapidly, and we're solving all kinds of problems like this. And yes, we're developing more computational power and different techniques. We still have limits on the kind of data that we can receive and input into those systems. And say there are planned expansions on space telescopes. China's building massive new radio telescopes, etc., to collect more information. And as we get more information in, we'll have more idea of what's out there.
It was a controlled photon switch.
Yeah.
With quantum dot technology and all sorts of stuff.
And that may well help with processing that data once we've received it.
Right. So you're talking about exponentially, so much faster than anything we have.
Even this anomaly that was discovered.
But I don't see that's relevant to the question of what may be out there or what may not be. For myself, as I said earlier, I'd love to find out, that there is someone else out there. At the moment, I don't think we have enough information to give a firm judgment either way. Our understanding of biology and chemistry suggests that it's certainly possible that there's stuff out there. Our understanding of astronomy and cosmology is sufficient to know that there are planets out there. We understand in a great degree how they're formed and how they're placed in the universe. So there's places for stuff to live out there. But until we get more information in, and until we do see some kind of observable sign that there is something out there, we simply don't have enough information to make a firm judgment either way.
You're right.
Yep. Joseph, you had something else that you wanted to say?
No, Chris said it.
Okay. Now there's a piece about this that I want to make sure that we've got, because the telegraph was mentioned, and again, ham radio experience. I'm gonna piss off a whole bunch of people, and you know what? Tough. Da 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 da. Shit. God, it's been so long since I've done it.
Morse code.
Yeah. Da 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 da. Now most people are so used to hearing it as dot dash dot dash. I was taught differently, which was you say it the way that you hear it. So it's da dit. So in this case, da 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 dit da 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 da, which, even though I'm doing it quickly, translates to the letters C and Q. Why CQ? No. Why CQ? Because it is a phoneme for seek you. It's a prefix that you make when you're just calling out into the void and saying, anybody out there, I'm seeking you.
Yep, and anybody old enough to remember that probably remembers that it was also ended up being used as a title for an instant messaging program, which had a good stay for a long time.
Uh-oh. And Q in French means ass, so I guess that means watching porn.
Sure.
That explains.
You had to go there, huh?
It's France. What the hell are you gonna do? All right, so
France and foreign, just
Okay, so Bridge, I'm not gonna let you get away without getting something in here.
Oh dear.
Besides moronity, do you have any clue what is the most abundant substance in the universe? I'll give you a hint.
Water.
If you pull up the periodic table of elements, it's number one with a bullet.
Hydrogen.
Well,
no?
You're quite right. It's hydrogen.
Yay!
The very first one, the simplest element, because it is the first one.
It's the most basic.
It's a matter of consequence.
Yep. Now, the reason why this is important is because one of the things that we have to remember is technology changes. Encoding schemes change. How information gets transmitted changes. You want to talk about hardware? Okay, you're so used to seeing Cat5 cable? Congratulations, all well and good. Twisted pair for telephone. How about token ring for network.
Cell phone,
Apple. Hold on. Apple Talk for apples. You had
Okay.
a whole bunch of different methods, hardware-wise, that have changed over our lifetime that we
Yeah.
don't even think about anymore. And
With
they're
good reason.
with good reason. That's why these guys who have been so incredibly brilliant, have PhDs after their name several times over in some cases, said, how dumb can we make this? And by dumb, simple.
Mm-hmm.
KISS. Besides being...
Simple, stupid.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You keep it simple. You don't have to change anything. And somebody should stumble upon it sooner or later. The natural vibration of hydrogen is, and this is kind of where it pulls back around to Doc Brown, is 1.42 gigahertz. Actually, technically, it's 1.4204058 gigahertz. And yes, it's properly pronounced gigahertz.
Mm-hmm.
Now, is that important? Yeah, actually, it kind of is. We can detect hydrogen in the universe. We've got the ability of picking that out on radio. So if suddenly in the big background there is suddenly...
The cosmic background radiation.
Yeah. But if all of a sudden you've got a massively, relatively speaking, large blip in that background radiation that's coming at you, and then it's not, and then it is, and then it's not, and then it is, then you start to notice, wait a minute, did we break something? Did you guys plug everything in? Did you pay the power company? I mean, do we have a power conditioner on that line? You start to notice those kinds of things happening. Bridge, if you've dealt with the medical side, as you've said before, medicine is a very inexact science, unfortunately, in a lot of respects.
It's an art, actually.
Yeah. I mean, there are certain things that we know are supposed to happen with certain amounts of regularity and certain frequency and with certain amounts of expectation. And when things don't go the way that they're supposed to, that gets people's attention pretty quickly that are trained in these arts, no?
It does. On certain procedures, we have expected outcomes that will happen in a certain time frame, and if it's out of the norm on that, it does get our attention.
Yeah, there are people who go looking for this kind of stuff, and the first stage of something like that would be what I would think of in terms of triage. And again, I know I'm using the wrong word for it, but the idea of trying to figure out, first off, what the hell just happened? And that's usually you guys who are in the trenches, so to speak, first line of defense of, okay, why is somebody behaving the way that they are with a specified treatment, for example? Perfect example, there's some kids that will take, what the hell is it I'm thinking of? Antihistamines.
Mm-hmm.
And normally, you take an antihistamine, what's it do to you?
It usually blocks your IgE response, and you take antihistamines to block histamine in your immune system, and it gets rid of the symptoms of an allergy.
Okay. Symptom-wise, nasal passages, dry out and open up, and most people kind of get like lethargic and sleepy.
Mm-hmm.
Except, and this comes from the times that I spent at a pharmacy, except for the small and rare occasion where kids get involved.
And they get hyper on it.
How, How scary is that for parents that have never seen that before?
It's very scary. And the same thing with codeine on babies and toddlers. Usually it makes them very sleepy, but on a few of them, it makes them bounce off the walls.
Be the equivalent of jotting down, bubbling up your coffee through a percolator with Red Bull, no?
Mm-hmm. And it is very bizarre when that happens. And those same people have a tendency to fall asleep if they drink something with caffeine in it.
So
which
when
is interesting.
So when things happen that are outside of the expectation, people kind of take notice of that kind of thing. Dallin, you had a perfect example. You had guys in your professional environment where they were trying to figure it out, trying to figure out, why doesn't this work? Why doesn't this work? Did you pay this bill? And it turned out to be exactly that, didn't it?
It wasn't quite so much that they didn't pay the bill. It was, well, they didn't pay the work bill. There was basically I'd been put in front of some people to do some demo work for them, and the software I had kept breaking, and the people who designed it insisted that everything was fine until I sat them down and proved it.
I was actually thinking of one of the hardware sets where it couldn't talk to it. Why? Oh, right.
Yeah. Yeah. There was that one too. That one was fun. Imagine me going to my boss and actually saying, "Yeah, the reason we don't have internet today," and then I showed him the message that I got from the provider, and sure enough, the company accountant had forgotten to pay the bill.
So the point is, if we see something that's out of the ordinary, we're going to go ahead and we're going to take notice of that. That's kind of our thing. Pattern recognition is a great thing for us, and we're kind of putting that on everybody else too, anthropomorphizing whatever life might be out there.
Yeah.
So, as we're getting as we're getting down with all of this, because I want to try to wrap us up as close to the 2-hour mark as possible at this point, because I really need to get myself into bed and really sleeping off a lot of this stuff. Forgive me if I'm kind of putting the brakes on just a little bit. I got to wrapping into something else, and I'm realizing, oh crap, yeah, we got just a little bit of time left. We should really wrap this up. Shit. Sorry. Let me excuse me 1 second. I'm sorry. If you've been hearing my audio turning on, turning off every once in a while, sorry. I just don't want to be coughing in your ears. Sorry. I don't know who wants to drop any last items over here without making references to the Alien. Is it trilogy or quadrilogy? I don't even remember how many movies there are. I never watched any of them.
Technically, it's a quadrilogy.
They're going to be making a Prometheus 2.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I believe Yogurt. No, Shujin, I believe Yogurt said it best. With any luck, we'll all be back here for Prometheus 2, the search for more money.
and never have more truer words ever been said.
Yeah.
Well, to complicate things, this is another consideration. Parallel worlds. What if something's going on in another dimension?
Michio Kaku,
we have the Joseph
guy who
here, folks.
Michio Kaku makes the guy who makes the possible seem now.
If it's happening in a parallel dimension or something else, then then leave it there.
Until that hand.
Whatever gets him airtime.
Yeah. Until we got the funky device out of sliders from the 70s.
Yeah. When the hand from the parallel dimension reaches through the fold and hands me a beer, then I'll believe in parallel dimensions. Until then, I remain skeptical. And missing a beer, by the way.
Yeah, and until I get a degree in advanced maths, the whole thing just gives me too much of a headache. But Shijin made a point of like anthropomorphizing
Yeah.
what's out there, um, as in whatever we find out there in the way of life, if we ever do, um, or if it is out there, is not likely to be the Star Trek kind of guys with funny foreheads. It's likely to be something um, vastly different to what we know in some ways. But again, it's a matter of if you're looking for a needle in a haystack, the first thing that you've got to do is know that you're looking for a needle.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so we can certainly look at one of the areas I mentioned earlier is looking at the full range of what life exists on Earth. We've got bacteria that live in sulfuric acid pools around volcanoes and thermal vents, and
Well, they have bacteria
Good
that
point.
live in nuclear reactors.
yeah,
Mhm.
all kinds of really weird stuff like that that in previous years we didn't know, and so that broadens and broadens the Goldilocks zone in which we can look for things that are alive. But
Yeah.
is there any point for looking for something that we don't even have a clue what it is? No, because we wouldn't know what to look for, and if we'd found it. So the more we understand about what life can do here, um, the more we get a handle on what may be possible out there. Are we anthropomorphizing or looking in an Earth-centric way? Possibly, but as I say, that's our best guess, our best understanding of what might be out there, and so that's going to be the most effective way for us to look, rather than looking for something completely bizarre. And there are a lot of reasons involving like the chemistry of carbon and liquid water and things where we can expect that that's going to be a fairly good bet in the terms of its chemical behavior for forming something as complex as life.
All it
Um,
takes is a membrane,
Mm-hmm.
as far as they
well,
know.
well,
And we can't make assumptions that it's humanoid either.
no, certainly not. Anything that's evolved under different conditions is going to have followed a different evolutionary path that we have, and looked very different. But we can also make ideas that any civilization that's got to the point of using radio waves to communicate will have to have a certain basic knowledge of how the universe works, basic sort of chemistry, certain degree of mathematics, etc., to produce and encode a radio signal, and then although they may use a different numerical system to us, certainly a different way of working things out, then they should also be competent to recognise the kind of information that we've been transmitted out.
Well, one can hope.
So we are anthropomorphizing to some degree, but then we have to, and the people doing this are no doubt aware of aware of this. But so if I may sort of move on to a closing note,
Yes,
as I
please.
mentioned earlier, it's a fascinating topic and thing to speculate about. We don't yet have the hard data to form a judgment either way. So there are people that have jumped to a conclusion on either side, or there are people that firmly believe that creatures from outer space are visiting us and kidnapping rednecks and doing weird things to us, doing weird things to people. These people are sadly mistaken. As far as I can tell, there's never been any hard evidence to suggest that there's anything real going on there. There are also those people that, for one reason or another, say that we're special, we're the only ones that are in the universe. And I would say that's incredibly arrogant.
Mhm.
And to assume that until we've reached the point where we've examined thoroughly the rest of the universe, then it seems only fair to admit that there's going to be things out there that we have no idea what they are.
Yeah.
Ken Ham
And
says
the
that
only
aliens
way-
are going to hell.
Well, let's
yes,
face it,
certainly,
Ken Ham's an
until
ass.
until Ken Ham or anyone else can give me a Google Map reference for where hell is.
Yeah.
Yeah, and any kind of convincing evidence that it's even a thing. Yeah, I'm not going to buy that.
To be perfectly frank, I'm pretty sure that anybody using Apple Maps will tell you that hell is anywhere you're trying to drive through if you don't have Google Maps to rely on instead. What would you like to use as your closing at this point with everything?
Yeah.
You did say me, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Science will never claim to have all the answers because we're constantly coming up with new questions, constantly rethinking old questions, and constantly retesting things under new conditions, new variables that we've come across that maybe we didn't know before or we didn't have enough advancement to be aware of before. So it's honest in that when it's got something wrong, the people aside that have the pride and go, oh, I can't I got to make sure I keep pushing this answer because otherwise I'm wrong and I don't want to be wrong. Yes, there are people like that in every field. It doesn't matter what it is. It can be science, it can be anything. But at the heart of science itself, when it's wrong, it says it's wrong and it self-corrects. You don't see that in religion. You don't see that in many of these dogmas and theologies and things like that. You see stagnatism in them. So to call, I'm bringing this out there because all of our, the reason why I'm bringing this up is because all of our discussion on space and everything else has caused my mind to replay a lot of discussions that I've listened and watched on YouTube of Dawkins and Hitchens and Bill Nye and you name it, Tyson, all of them. And,
Oh, that was interesting.
We lost him.
Yes, we
Your agent
We
has
lost
got
tech.
Well, apparently he pissed off the Dawkins god. Oh, that's good.
No, it's the alien.
It looks like the great Godwin Murphy has intervened.
Yeah, it would seem so. All right, he just tried to
Back.
rejoin. All right, we'll get him back in a couple of moments. We'll wait for that to happen. Joseph, go ahead and have you while we're waiting for Tech to get back. What would you like to close up with?
Just one point that, if we don't understand everything about our own existence, how can we know what to look for in other possible life forms? Just all we have to go with is the visible or the known spectrum. I mean, anything above gamma level energy is basically becomes mass. So like we're quite aware of what the spectrum is. We're just going to have to look for patterns.
So has anybody else got this one before? Call failed due to authentication issues.
That's
a first for me.
Problem. And really, if you'd gone to Planned Parenthood and gotten yourself some protection, this probably wouldn't have happened in the first place. But I'm sorry, I'm making a call out to somebody. So you were about to say a couple of moments ago with whoever was it you were referencing for Dawkins, I think was the name you used last.
Oh, I was saying that all our discussions tonight and everything that we've talked about reminded me of several of the discussions that Dawkins and Hitchens and and Tyson and Bill Nye and the rest of them, Dennett, have had on stage that you can find on YouTube and everything else, and that is science is not a religion. It's just a tool, but it's a constant self-correcting tool. And one of the beautiful things is that because of our advancements in our science and our scientific knowledge, we can sit here tonight and come up with these ideas and concepts of what's in outer space and what could possibly be the likelihood, the statistical probabilities, and things like that because of our knowledge gathering and our the self-correcting nature of science itself. And I look forward to the discoveries and advancements that it brings us in the future, as long as the people, whether we're watching this here, whether or not we even know the show exists, but the people of the world continue to advance it for our betterment.
Okay. Dallin, what would you like?
Well, I think I'm just going to reiterate what I'd said earlier tonight about this discovery, whatever it is. I mean, we've already said...
Oh, don't do that.
No,
Yeah, Tech, that was right into your mic.
yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
What are we discovering?
Yeah, for those of you listening to the podcast later on, that was not Tech taking a leak. That was him.
I'm having a emergency.
Probably having a very
dramatic kickstart being poured into that, folks. For those of you with a discerning ear, that was the sound of a fruit punch flavored kickstart by Mountain Dew being poured into a glass.
That wasn't.
And the glass was half full.
Yes, it was.
Yes, it was.
It was not
You're
sweet tea.
positive
It was
person.
not him snoring. So there you go. Alan, go ahead and finish up, man.
Okay, I do want to just reiterate what I said earlier tonight when we first started talking about the discovery, whatever it is. Yes, the mainstream media did latch onto it. And yes, there's going to be some guy with a bad hairdo at some point going, aliens. We know this. Because that's how mainstream media works. But I'm hoping that even though there's going to be this kind of spin on it and every scientist is just going to facepalm about it, I do hope that we get some good out of it in that maybe, just maybe, it will lead to that inspiration to push our exploration program a little bit further ahead. Maybe this will galvanize the imagination of somebody trying to work on this. Maybe it'll get someone up off the desk and pen to paper or something. Like, it sucks that they went to this conclusion. But if in the end it sparks something that could, say, benefit us in the long run, I'm all for it.
Yeah.
There's a piece about that I definitely want to...
My concern is that irresponsible and stupid reporting for the media may have the opposite effect, that the people, possibly people making funding decisions, will see these headlines of the alien super spaceship or whatever discovered, and then in a few weeks it'll blow over in the media, or it will come out, not come out, or that someone with two brain cells to rub together will report, yeah, it's just a comet or whatever else, and people will think, oh, these scientists, they thought they saw aliens and it was just a comment, what do they know, etc. Why are we giving them all this money?
Well,
and that it will have the reverse effect, as has unfortunately happened too frequently in the past.
Yeah.
Don't worry. I'm gonna kind of wrap into that when I close this up. Bridget, where would you like to close up with?
I would like to say that I am furious that funding to NASA keeps getting cut. for some reason or another, the government seems to think it's not worth spending money on space exploration anymore, and I think that is a huge mistake. We are going to have countries in, third world countries in the Middle East that beat us as far as colonizing Mars, and that shouldn't happen. I think with cutting funds for science and research and space exploration, that's going to push us to third world country status within the next 2 or 3 decades.
With the way things are going, if the sterilization didn't work quite correctly on the probes that we've sent out there, we may have already colonized Mars. Unfortunately, maybe.
Well, that's not what I meant. I mean, as far as like sending human beings there, we're probably going to be last.
Maybe, but let's not forget. Yes, the United States is the only one that's sent manned missions to another celestial body, but it's still humanity that's managed to do that. And I think this is part of where I want to close this out of. At one point, you might have seen me get up and get out of my seat for a second. I wanted to grab this. For those of you that can't see, for some people, you might refer to this as a walkie-talkie. It's not too far from the truth. It's a fairly reasonable statement for it. Fortunately, I sprung a little extra for myself and got a lapel microphone that I could clip the thing onto my belt and put the little speaker mic onto my shoulder so I could hear and talk. But this was my go-to ham radio. You turn it on, you get this.
Load ranging from the upper 20s inland to the mid-30s along the Lake Ontario shore. Northwest winds 10 to 15 miles an hour, diminishing to 10 miles an hour or less. Chance of precipitation 40%. Sunday, mostly cloudy. A chance of snow and rain showers in the morning. Then
I'm picking up the weather report. A mechanized automatic signal with an automatic mechanized voice artificially generated from the National Weather Service here in Buffalo. What frequency is it on? Doesn't matter. I mean, it matters to the machinery and how it decodes that. It's important to that. It's also important to the National Weather Service because they use a standard system to put it out there. They're using FM transmission, which, again, has a very specific underpinning of logic as far as to why they use the frequency that they use, because that was set aside by government agencies who are in charge of the spectrum of frequencies that are being used by who and how much power they're allowed to radiate and how much area they're supposed to cover. Carl Sagan famously used the quote, and it was used by, I forget which group it was that produced a song called A Curious Dawn, I believe is what it was called. Famously, he said, "The simplest thought, like the concept of the number 1, has an elaborate logical underpinning." Just the idea of the number 1 on is a fabulous experiment in mental gymnastics of trying to understand what is it supposed to mean. You can easily demonstrate it as 1 dot on a page. Well, if you don't have a common language, are you talking about the spot? Are you talking about the amount of ink that you're using to produce it, or graphite, or crayon? Is it the length of the mark that maybe you've made a tick on a page? Is it specifically this color? How far along do you have to try to come up with it before you finally zero in on, oh, it's an artificial construct. It's an imaginary item. It's a place marker for the concept of a singular something. It's not an easy item to think through. I'm sorry, Bridge. You said?
I said good point.
Yeah. So, are we going to anthropomorphize anything that might be out there? Yeah. Yeah, we kind of do, because that's what we do. We have to deal with seeing patterns where there typically aren't patterns, unfortunately. And I know the rest of you guys remember what the correct term is. I've forgotten off the top of my head.
Pareidolia.
Pareidolia. Thank you. Because I'm tired and I'm sick, and as Eli Bosnick would put it, because F you, that's why.
Thank you, Shane.
You're welcome. But we don't have too much of a choice in the matter. We have an expectation based on what we've seen in the observable universe, at least as much as what we've been able to see, out however many thousands of light years out, millions of light years out. The observable universe out there. Are there other areas that we don't know anything about? Oh, undoubtedly. But we come back to what we started with. The Drake equation says that there should be a certain number out of a certain number, out of a certain number, out of a certain number, out of a certain number. And somewhere inside of all of those numbers, we can finally come up with the answer 1. How many civilizations have there been in the universe? The number at this point is 1. Right now, that's as best as what we know, because we can actually go down the street. We could go next door. Hell, we can be on our computers and actually see there is other life out there in the universe away from me. And I'm talking to it right now. As a matter of fact, if I wanted to, with the International Space Station going overhead, I could use my little ham radio to talk to them. When they're off duty, they've got a ham radio. You can talk to them. You can listen to them. The frequencies are published. Their times are published. Their call signs are published. In normal places, under normal circumstances, that are available for anyone to find out. They're standardized. They're put out there so that people can use them. The universe doesn't exactly have somebody that's watching over it, as far as we know. And I'm not talking about a god. I'm talking about how things have laid out. We've got certain pieces that we've been able to see. We have certain constants that we accept, that we, in some cases, take for granted because there's only so much that we can do. We expect that certain chemical processes happen the way that they do constantly throughout the universe, even though there have been certain pieces where we think that that might not necessarily be quite right. Do we know for certain? Well, even though it sucks to have to say it and to quote the Amish Wolverine, were we there? No. But that's the cool part about science. The answer to were you there is no. And that's okay.
But we're getting there.
But we're getting there. And with any luck, I'm not going to get there. My daughter isn't going to get there. Any children that she has, down through several generations, won't get there. But I have the hope that one day, one of us will. Do I have faith in that? Yeah. Because if there's one thing that we are really good at here on Earth, it's finding out where is the next place that we haven't been. Let's go there. I'm not going to get there. You're not going to get there. But if you're watching from the future and you're the one who's there, good on you. As always, everyone, thank you very much for your time and spending part of it with us. We know that we are not the lowest on the podium right now, but we sure as hell ain't going to be setting any records or winning any awards, so thank you for spending your time with us and finding something worthwhile in what we've got to say. As always, everybody, thank you very much for your time this morning. Joseph, you have a good morning over there. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, sir.
Sir. I'm wearing a bathrobe. He's calling me sir. Chris, you have yourself a good morning, and try not to chain smoke quite so many this morning. Maybe sometime.
That's right. Yeah. Apologies for the chain smoking, and to anyone watching, smoking is a filthy habit. Don't do it. I'm on one of my rare nights where I've pulled an all-nighter. I blame Facebook and YouTube. They're terrible things. Don't do them.
Social media.
Unrenowned Tech, you have yourself a good morning, and thanks for coming back with us, man.
Absolutely. And remember, folks, if you're going to do terrible, nasty things, do them in the comfort and privacy of your own home. With the cameras turned off. Unless you want to record it for posterity, but just make sure your kids don't see it. You don't want to scar them for life.
Yes, remember to put a sign out on the...
Or send me the video.
Yes, and don't forget to put a sign out on the front door that says, please, if you are from 911, this is all consensual. Call me on my phone. I can prove it. Maybe, I don't know if that works or not. I'm saying it for a friend. Bridget, thank you very much for your time, and I'll explain who that's for in a second. You have yourself a good morning.
You too.
And Dallin, of course, thank you very much, man, and you have yourself a good night.
I plan to, and it was a pleasure to be here again.
And a couple of pieces of housekeeping information. Item number one, of course, if you would like to chime in for the show at any time, please feel free to drop us an email over at podcast@holycrapthevlogcast.com. Love to get some email from folks, something other than from the security system that says, hey, somebody's trying to log into your account again. It'd really be nice to have something other than that, for a change. Please, be great. If you'd like to leave a voicemail message, you can do that at the voice line 859-HCTV-554. Again, 859-4288-554. I'd love to do some kind of a cool mnemonic for that, but the IT crowd already stole that joke, so screw that noise. You can find us over on Twitter at HolyCrapTV, and YouTube, Google+, and Facebook, it's /HolyCrapTheVlogcast. Pretty straightforward from there. Collectively, on behalf of the entire crew, we'd like to make a very large hi to Nick, and specifically Nick Morganmore.
That's his name.
That's his name. We can all get away with it because the copyright is no longer valid. So Warner Brothers, screw you. We're all going to do it right about now. Everybody, tune up. You ready? Here we go. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. It's his name. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, Nick.
Does anybody know how old he is?
Dirt. I'm going to go with dirt.
Okay, because
That's
his age.
I don't believe you.
Good night, everybody.
Wow.
Nice.
Perfect. Cut the feed. Cut the feed. That's perfect.
I have.
I am so dead, but what the hell?
You know what? That's brilliant. Anyway, I am in the process of working on getting a couple of folks to see about joining us with a little bit of help from my friends. To quote from the Beatles. We're looking at getting Jeff Dees to come on sometime in the near future to talk about hell, because if you've ever heard Jeff Dees talk about people saying you're going to go to hell, I've wanted to talk with him for a long time. We're going to see about trying to get Aaron Ra to be on with us, because I want to talk with him about how important education is, because he's on the forefront.
That would be cool. That would be awesome.
I would be honestly intimidated.
You know what? Good.
There's nothing to be intimidated about.
He's-
The guy is just—he's an awesome guy
Yeah.
from everything that I've heard.
He's willing to come. He
No,
said
but-
yes.
I'll be
Yes.
perfectly honest. The first time I saw this guy on any kind of video, you know, he's got the beard, he's got the hair, he kind of leaned into the camera. I just kind of went, oh, shh.
He's
Dallin, the
really,
other
really tall.
Yeah,
Well,
Dallin,
so
the
am
only
I,
reason
so-
that you're worried about it is because he's going to be taller than you. That's the only thing that you're worried about, right?
No, he's not that tall.
He's
How
taller
tall
than
is he?
everybody. Yeah, he is.
You know what? Get him on here. I'll ask him how tall he is, and then we can do a comparison after that.
My
Wow,
dad's
great.
bigger than your dad.
Great. Collective shoe waving. That's great. That's exactly what this is going to be. That's wonderful. And I
Find out
I
if he
can go
likes
on record-
pork rinds.
If I can actually say I have the privilege of being able to see Art and eye to eye, I think that's a good thing. Actually, chances are him and I will see eye on a lot of things.
You know what? On the
Is that
internet,
how it goes?
everybody has eye height with a webcam. It doesn't matter.
And
And like I said, I do still want to write off a letter and get it off to Dr. Tyson and ask him if I would absolutely love, because I don't want to talk with him about astrophysics. I don't want to talk with him about why don't you identify as an atheist. I want to talk to him as, why are you a science guy? Somebody like me who grew up originally back in the city, back in New York City, what the hell went wrong with you? Because, let's face it,
I'd like to know what kind of fishing gear he wants so I can go to my local Bass Pro store here and get it for him when we go fishing on Europa.
there you go.
Well,
Dan?
it's going to happen.
Well,
Dan?
I see that,
yes,
Yeah, check out my screen.
I got it.
yeah. So how tall are you?
About 6'2", 6'3".
Damn it,
So-
I might have an inch or two on that guy. I'm 6'3".
I'm 6'1".
Really?
Art's taller than that.
I got a
No,
rock.
I was thinking, Joseph at 6'1", like, this would actually be one of the few times I'd actually say you don't look taller on the internet. Thin.
Well, thin, yeah. Well,
Yeah, thin, yes. Sadly, I am not, but I'm working on that.
Yeah,
Okay.
you and me both.
I'm
You've
working on that as well.
you've got the vertical worked out.
Yeah, unfortunately, I got the horizontal worked out a little bit too well.
I
I blame the
can't.
fact that I like to cook.
Don't worry about it.
And my big complaint is that I'm still working on pregnancy weight. One of these days, I'll get rid of it. We will.
Menopause.
Don't even start with me. I passed biology. I know that doesn't work for me. Yet, I've still got another 20 years.
I can throw some theoretics about the liver, but that's another story for another show.
Yeah, we'll talk about that. Tao, that's your liver we're talking to. So there you go.
No, definitely not
we-
his liver.
We have to get out of here because I need to just crawl into bed at this point. Everybody, thank you very much for your time. If you've got ideas, please by all means send them our way, and we'll be more than happy to entertain those and see what comes of it. This was a lot of fun for me this time. I like being able to talk about this stuff, even if we don't necessarily get to a final solution to anything. I know. Don't say it. I love the idea of exploring where this stuff goes. Why is such a great question. Or in this case,
Yeah.
how. I don't believe you just did that. I don't believe you. Heretic woman, I blame you. I blame you for not being here. In any case, you have a good week. I will get information out for the next show as soon as I can. I'm sorry, this was not my better week. But in the meantime, thanks. We'll get ourselves on out of here. As always, say goodnight for all of you, and I say goodnight for my lady too, because 10 years on, I'm still in love. I don't even want to know who that is. Matane Fujin, I love you and I miss you. Dream of me. Till the next time we get together, everybody, probably next week. Good night.